Good morning. Thanks for being here this morning. A couple of years ago, I made an announcement that I was going to put the state of Ohio's checkbook on the internet. When I made that announcement, Ohio's ranking for governmental transparency was 46th in the country. As a result of OhioCheckbook.com, we earned Ohio the #1 ranking in America for governmental transparency. A lot of people think the whole point of that initiative was transparency, and while that was part of it, the real point was transferring the power from the politicians to the people, empowering everyday taxpayers to hold politicians accountable. If we're going to empower taxpayers, if we're going to give the people the power to hold the politicians accountable, we need to make sure that politicians cannot spend their entire adult life in Washington, D.C. So today I'm excited to make an announcement that I am signing a pledge to institute term limits in Washington, and even if these politicians in Washington refuse to do it, I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to volunteer to implement term limits to make sure they apply to myself. About 25 years ago, Sherrod Brown campaigned on term limits. So it was 1992, 25 years ago, Sherrod Brown campaigned on term limits. He told the voters that he pledged to only stay in Washington for 12 years. And then miraculously, after he got to Washington, he's changed his mind, and he's been in Washington for 25 years. I think voters are sick of politicians like Sherrod Brown and others who say one thing to the voters and then do something else. I also think they're sick of politicians like Sherrod Brown, who went to Washington to do good and then stayed in Washington to do well. Do well for himself, do well for his cronies, do well for his lobbyist buddies. He got addicted to the trappings of the office, he got addicted to the black tie dinners and the cocktail parties, and he forgot where he came from and forgot who he represented. Sherrod Brown's voting record is 97% with Elizabeth Warren. Think about that for a second. Elizabeth Warren represents Massachusetts. We represent Ohio. We don't want Massachusetts values or San Francisco values represented here in Ohio. What we want is Midwest, modest values represented here in Ohio. And unfortunately, somewhere in his 25 years in Washington, Sherrod Brown lost his way. But it started when he broke his pledge. It started when he broke the pledge to the voters. In this election, I'll be 40 years old, and Sherrod Brown will be 40 years in politics. Sherrod Brown has been running for political office since Richard Nixon was president. The people of Ohio want fresh blood, the people of Ohio want fresh ideas, and the only way we're going to get it is with new leaders in Washington. The only way we're going to get it is with term limits in Washington. We need to transfer the power from the politicians to the people and make sure these politicians like Sherrod Brown and others cannot spend their entire adult life in Washington, D.C. Today I'd like to welcome Nick Timolitis here to Columbus, Ohio. Nick is with an organization called U.S. Term Limits. U.S. Term Limits is a nonpartisan organization. They work with both Democrats and Republicans who want to commit to term limits. And they ask Democratic and Republican candidates for office to take a pledge and to sign a pledge. And today I'm going to sign that pledge. Before I do that, though, I want to welcome Nick up to the podium, and then we'll sign the pledge and be glad to open up for questions. Nick.